For USCFootball.com, I'm Jack Smith, joined alongside Ryan Abraham for instant analysis after USC's Tuesday morning practice. You're not Chris. That's kind of weird.
No, Chris Trevino, the way you say it. Yeah, Chris, secret assignment today, so we're taking over. I got the Ghost Note stuff down over at USCFootball.com, but it's a little weird, Jack. The first time in almost a month, we got to see the offensive players out in their Cardinal jerseys and the defensive players out in the white jerseys, because it was October 8th was the last USC home game for Washington State. But you had the Utah game, you had the Arizona game, and the bye week in between. So it's been a while since you had this kind of home feel. So it seemed like the players and the coaches were kind of ready to be back. Lincoln Riley was pretty happy out there. So yeah, I think people are happy that now you got this homestand coming up.
Yeah, let's start with Lincoln Riley, because as always, he talks after Tuesday practices. He mentioned a lot of different things, but he started it off with a statement about injuries. I think he knows that people are going to ask him. USC's got a lot of injured players. What did you think of his overall statement that he made?
He seemed pretty happy with himself. We were talking about this off air. He was like, he doesn't normally make a statement when we do like our Tuesday practice, but he came out and was like, let me talk about the injuries. And it was very like about as like generic, if you're going to write it down like for like legalese, like lawyers, what lawyers would say. It's like everyone played a little, not everyone played everything, or no one's ruled out, no one's definitely going to play. So essentially the same sort of situation, I think, what we had knowing at the Arizona game. Guys coming back, we got to see some things that we're not allowed to talk about, whatever. But I would say the general feel is it's about where you were after the Arizona game. So maybe they get some of these guys back. Do you really need to, and all the aspects of it? So we'll see. But yeah, in injuries, it's sort of just like status quo. Like he was going to give this kind of generic statement. And yeah, I don't think he wanted the kind of random questions that he got before, like, is Andrew Voorhees, he didn't play kind of thing. So he was caught off guard a little bit last week. So I think this was more of a nip it in the bud. Everyone's kind of okay. We'll see what they might play, they might not.
He did say he had a gut feeling that at least they'd get a few of them back, so I think that's a good sign for USC fans. You don't know who's it going to be yet between Jordan Addison, Mario Williams, Andrew Voorhees, some of these injured players. But he did say gut feeling he feels like they're going to get at least a few of them back from injury. Yeah. But you were right. He definitely seemed a little bit more giddy today, a little bit happier. I don't know if it's the nice autumn weather that we've got. It's November now. Maybe he doesn't like Halloween, and so he's happy it's over. I have no idea. But Lincoln Riley did seem more happy. And then Keely Eure asked him about the college football playoff rankings, and he straight up said, I couldn't care less. I pay no attention. He very much was against looking at the college football playoff rankings. What did you think of everything he had to say about that?
Yeah, that was interesting too. I know Dabo Swinney was asked about that earlier today, and he's like, I don't care. And he's been in the playoffs. Lincoln Riley's been in the playoffs. He doesn't care. And I think he's like, he gave an example of one year they were like up there, number 5 or something, and they lost, and they drop all the way down to 19. So everyone's like, well, they're not going to make the playoff anymore. And then they made the playoff that year. So he's like, it doesn't really matter if you lose, you have to come back and win. USC's already lost one. Basically, you have to go out and win it out, and he said it'll take care of itself. So knowing that going forward, he's like, just got to go out and play. And I feel like that's the right attitude. He's like, the only one that matters is the last one. So whatever the random Tuesday, there's guys, a whole bunch of people meeting in Texas, decide USC's 9, 10, or 11 or whatever, doesn't seem like it's going to matter to him at all. And sometimes coaches say things, you're like, no, they don't mean that. I felt he meant that. I felt he means that he doesn't really care what the playoff rankings are, which I think it's probably fair.
Yeah, for all fans and media members who do care, the college football playoff rankings, the first installment will come out tonight on ESPN. I don't remember exactly what time it is, but you're going to get them tonight. We'll see where USC slots in. A couple more things that Lincoln Riley talked about were Jayden de Laura's escapability, and then also you asked him about how USC only has 1 turnover through a couple games. What did you think of the last kind of notes he had?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of how I was going to ask about it. I think I asked him after they had 6 games at the press conference, like 1 turnover through 6 games, and he was pretty happy about it. I think he talked about some of the procedural things they really work on, and I asked him, have you been around a team 8 games in that only had 1 turnover? And he kind of like laughed a little again. It was just like, put me on the spot here. He's like, he couldn't really remember one. And I think that's one of those things where my gut feeling was it was sort of like a no-hitter. Like you're in the 6th inning of a no-hitter and you don't want to talk about it anymore. It's like, can you keep going? Like, could they have a game in the next couple of weeks where they turn the ball over 3 times? Probably. I mean, the odds are like you can't keep flipping a coin, have a heads every time. I felt like he didn't really want to discuss it much, knowing like this is kind of special that you've gone through. It's not like you're, running the football and just, you're throwing the ball all over the field. Caleb Williams getting chased all over the field half the time. The fact that you only have 1 turnover is pretty remarkable. And then Jayden de Laura, speaking of running all over the field, we've heard him talk about opposing quarterbacks like a Cam Rising and just have glowing reviews for. There's something about Jayden de Laura he really likes. He was like, he's as special as it comes as far as doing that. He talked about, and today it's like trying to tackle Barry Sanders. So if you're a running back, there's holes you're going through. There's a tighter space. When you're a quarterback, a lot of times you have a lot of space, and now you have to make an open field tackle. So he knows that sometimes a quarterback's just going to make a play, and he's seen it with his own guys. But for whatever reason, Jack, I don't know what it is, but he seemed to really love Jaden Delores' game because, I mean, obviously he was pretty special against USC.
Yeah, he mentioned that, when you have a one-on-one attempt against Barry Sanders, it's good when you do tackle him. And I think he said that, one-on-one tackles with elusive players and mobile quarterbacks, you're not always going to tackle him. So that I think he was trying to change the point of view of, if you don't tackle him, it's not bad. When you do tackle him, it's a good play. It's kind of over-expected if you're making a tackle on an elusive quarterback like Delora. But you're right. He definitely has more rave reviews about Delora than some of the other quarterbacks that USC's faced, even though he's been very complimentary of pretty much every team that the Trojans have played so far. The last kind of point, we want to talk about Mason Murphy, who got the start at offensive tackle for the Trojans last weekend. Justin Dedich, after the game, said he's the most talented player in the offensive line room. And then Jonah Monheim today had a lot of great stories about Mason Murphy. What did you think about what Jonah Monheim had to say about the young tackle?
Yeah, it's funny. Not all of the young offensive linemen that you haven't seen much of are the same. It's not always the same. And for whatever reason, we've heard from the beginning, like Mason Murphy, there are people like, hey, we've heard coaches really like him, or the players are really like him. The fact that, Jonah Monheim talked about Justin Dedich saying, hey, this is my workout group. Mason Murphy comes in. They know how talented he is. He's like, I'm going to go switch and go work out with him. And I don't want to say special treatment, but they've definitely, I think, it was known that this guy has something. He has something that he could potentially be a long-time starter for USC on the field. The fact that you saw him come in and they moved the whole offensive line around so he could get starts at right tackle. Jonah Monheim talked today about moving inside to guard. He had practiced some in anticipation of this. He said that a lot of people project him to be a guard, so I don't think he has an issue with it. But the fact that they sort of kind of moved a lot of people around for Murphy kind of shows you what they think of him. And, Lincoln Riley had glowing reviews for him. He talked about it last night on the radio show, talked about him today. And, Jonah Monheim, and knowing what he brings to the room, it's not every young offensive lineman is the same. For whatever reason, a lot of people have just been really high on Mason Murphy, and you got to see him. And, apparently he graded out well. Monheim, I think, had the highest grade on the offensive line for moving to a new spot. That was great, too. But, there's definitely been some just a lot of people gushing about what Mason Murphy, all that potential there. So to get him make his first start, I think a lot of people in that room were happy for it.
Yeah, and he said that they were very much on him from the start. They knew he was going to be great, so they were on him on the field, in the weight room, in the classroom. Someone asked, he said that it was a little bit of brotherly love. They were tough on him sometimes, but I think it's very clear that people realize what Mason Murphy can be, and the offensive linemen here, the veteran ones, want to make sure he gets there. And it's important. We didn't really talk about Jonah Monheim moving to right guard much, but if he decides to come back for USC, you could have 4 spots on the offensive line field if you're looking at maybe him and Justin Dedich coming back, Dedich switching over to center, and Monheim proved that he can play right guard and he can play it well. Lincoln Riley said he graded out, I think, like a 95 yesterday on the radio show, so he was fantastic. Did you have any other thoughts from today's practice?
Yes, it's we talked about this before, like what was the energy like? It seemed pretty normal. It didn't seem like everyone was like hyped up to get back at home. And Lincoln Riley even talked about, you're practicing full pads today. Like they're practicing hard. He's like, a lot of teams don't do that at this time of year. It's November now. Like, yes, it's November. You could see a drop-off, but we didn't see that. So I feel like there's going to be a little spark, and Jonah Monheim talked about this a little bit, being able to play at home in front of your kind of home crowd and everything. It's been a while since they were able to do that. So I think there's going to be a little bit of juice there. Now, you might not see all the guys. We might see guys moving around. We didn't mention Tuli Tuipulotu moving around. He talked, mentioned a little bit about, kind of playing that linebacker spot that he was doing in, but he was sort of like downplaying, like, you know your gaps, you got to know all the things. But, they're going to be banged up a little bit probably still. There's probably going to be some guys playing in different positions, maybe what we saw against Arizona, maybe not. But I feel like they're ready to make this final push, knowing it's kind of, you split the last 4 games, like 2 very winnable ones and then 2 rivalry games that are really important. One of them very important to the Pac-12 title race, and then another one just important, nationally. So it feels like it's setting up well for them. And I think knowing that you haven't been around, you've been on the road for a month, it makes a difference. And I feel like that's what we're going to see kind of going forward, from this week of practice and then the next couple.
Yeah, Shane Lee mentioned he's just excited to be in the Coliseum for most of the rest of the year, and USC doesn't leave LA for the last 4 games, and they're hoping to leave for Vegas to make it to the Pac-12 championship game. But this team has also mentioned that they really like being on the road. That's where they get the most team bonding. So I kind of felt like, there's a little bit of like this team is excited to be at home, but also they do enjoy their road trips where they get to bond. Did you have any final closing thoughts before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I think the bonding part is important, but like after a while you're like, okay, you bonded at Oregon State, and then you bonded had Stanford, that was like not really as much of a road trip. Utah and Arizona, I think they're kind of ready to, like, we had enough bonding. Let's come back home and kind of play in front of the fans. And just having 4 games, like, 2 in the Coliseum, 1 in the Rose Bowl, another one in the Coliseum, I think that's important. I think it's important to the fans too. Some of the fans, you've sort of like, I don't want to say they checked out, but they're sort of like, oh, this team's 7-1 and the defense hasn't looked that good. Get them back in the Coliseum, get a win over your rival in Cal, get a win over Colorado, and then potentially set up like a 9-1 versus 9-1 USC UCLA at the same time when a potential 9-1 Utah is playing a 9-1 Oregon. So I think it could be a really exciting race through the end, but there's some steps you got to get through to get to that point. And obviously, beating California this weekend's the first step.
Yeah, USC number 9 in the AP poll. There's 4 Pac-12 teams in the top 12. The CFP rankings come out tonight, so we'll be able to see where USC ranks. We'll be able to see how many Pac-12 teams are up there. Lincoln Riley doesn't seem to care, but I think we do to see where USC is. That's all we've got for you guys today. Make sure you're checking out the CFP rankings. We'll be back here for tomorrow night doing instant analysis, and then also we've got different stuff on the website, on the YouTube. For Ryan Abraham, I'm Jack Smith. This has been Instant Analysis. Check out uscfootball.com for more.